a notification just saying recording. But what we're going to start with, our two speakers are going to just introduce themselves, a little bit of a introduction to who they are, what they've done, so we can get an understanding of who's giving the advice today, and then we'll move into a Q&A session that should be about 30 minutes long, and that'll be opportunity for people attending to ask any questions. And like I said, please do turn your camera and microphones on if you would like to. But I'm going to introduce Bal to start an introduction to who he is, his journey, and where he is today.
Perfect, thanks, Matt. I'm going to try to share my screen, so bear with me in case it doesn't work. But if anyone give me the thumbs up, or just say yes, as and when you can see the screen.
There we go.
Oh, amazing. Right. Can we still see it? Amazing. An amazing start already. So hello everyone, for anyone that's just recently joined, my name is Bal. I'm a commercial lawyer at West Midlands Police. In terms of my day job, outside of my day job, I co-chair an organisation called the Birmingham Solicitors Group, which is a professional networking group for junior lawyers in the Birmingham and West Midlands region. Conscious of the level of people listening to this, so the equivalent of that is basically when you're a student, when you join societies at universities, when you become a working professional, you can join lots of professional networking groups. And I'm very proud to say Birmingham Solicitors Group is one of the largest in the country of its kind. So basically, when you become a lawyer in the future, there's lots of different opportunities you can get involved in. So that's on the kind of regional scene. And then on the national scene as well, I'm a council member for the Law Society. So for anyone that's unfamiliar with the Law Society is the independent body and voice for qualified solicitors in England and Wales. And I'm part of their council, and that is essentially a group of solicitors which have been elected to represent either a geographical region, an area of law, or a special characteristic group. And the best analogy I use, so we all kind of, after 18, we're allowed to vote for MPs, and MPs represent us in government. The Law Society has exactly the same thing, and I represent junior lawyers. So that's me in a nutshell. So my career journey, I went to the University of Birmingham, and I did a traditional 3-year law degree, so an LLB. I did a vacation scheme at a firm called Trowers and Hamlins, and that was in my final year. Off the back of my 2-week vacation scheme, I got my training contract. So I spent 3 years at university doing my law degree, 1 year at the University of Law for my LPC, and then did my 2-year training contract at Trowers and Hamlins. Once I qualified at Trowers, I then moved to DLA Piper, which is a global law firm. Very different in terms of kind of culture, size, areas of law as well. So very different experience from when I was a trainee to once I become qualified. I was at DLA Piper for 1.5 years, and then the pandemic hit. So I lost all the perks of a big fancy law firm. And at that moment in time, I thought to myself, what else can I do with my career, especially as a qualified lawyer? That's when I kind of did the deep dive research, very similar to the kind of deep dive research I did as a student as well, looking into firms, seeing where for different organizations. And the one thing that came for me was in-house roles. There were things that they weren't really advertised when I was at university, and especially as a newly qualified solicitor as well. So there were lots of interesting roles out there, whether it was the police, the army, the NHS, the government, the land registry, you name it. So I settled on the police. I still wanted to be in Birmingham city centre because that's where I'm from. I could do different areas of law because it's in-house. I think lastly, I don't have any kind of friends or family that work in the police, so it's quite novel and unique for me. So yeah, I've been with them for over 2.5 years now, so far so good. So in terms of practice areas, so when you do your training contract, traditionally they are 2 years in length, and you do 4 6-month seats. So when I first joined Trowers and Hamlins for my training contract, I did a 6-month seat in real estate or commercial property. I then went on to construction. And then at the end of my construction seat, I had the opportunity to go back into real estate because they were so busy. I jumped to it because I was really interested in property law and really excited about all the projects, especially the local projects in Birmingham that Travers were involved in. So I went back into real estate and then had an inkling that this is something that I could qualify into. And then in my final seat, back then you had to do a litigation seat. So my last seat was my litigation seat where I did construction litigation and commercial litigation. So after kind of having the experience of all these different areas of law in my training contract, I think probably 1 year into it, I was pretty much settled that I knew I wanted to qualify into property or real estate. So after my training contract, became qualified and then moved to DLA Piper, where I was a real estate associate. And the kind of typical work that involves, so all property related work. So property sales, purchases, leases, licenses, easements, way leaves, basically anything to do with property. So that was my day in, day out, and I feel like I built a really good core foundation of kind of property law knowledge from my time there, especially at a large law firm like DLA Piper. But now in my current role, and I think this probably goes for most roles in-house, you don't just do one area of law. So when I moved to the police, I not only did my kind of normal work involving commercial property, so leases, licenses, rights of way in relation to police property. That can range from police stations to training facilities to offices for staff. But I also do lots of other areas of law as well that are listed there. So in terms of commercial law, it essentially means anything contractual. When you talk about commercial, I remember my time at university when people talked about commercial law, you just thought, oh, huge law firms, dealing with massive companies. But I think it's beyond that. So in my role now, commercial means anything contractual for the force. So that can range from research agreements with universities whenever they use police data, to commercial contracts behind football matches because the police need a presence at football matches in the West Midlands, to media agreements, so some of the stuff you might see on TV involving West Midlands Police. Very recently, if you jump onto iPlayer and check out BBC Two, the Real Forensic CSI, that's something that we worked on in-house. And of course, the kind of traditional policing elements as well, so collaboration agreements with other police forces for operational matters, and research and forensics and things like that. So that's commercial property and commercial, but there are also other elements as well. So procurement, because the police is a public sector organisation, no different to, I don't know, a government body, the NHS, the fire service. We have to follow kind of guidelines when it comes to buying services or property as well. So there's legislation that governs that, and that's procurement law. Intellectual property or IP, very related to commercial. Basically, most commercial contracts, and to a certain extent, some property contracts may have intellectual property elements. That can include things like working with forensics teams, working with different pieces of software. And I think the most clear example of that is working on the Commonwealth Games. Lots of intellectual property elements to that, especially when you talk about kind of merchandise and who can.
Hey, Megan.
Oh, I think we can hear someone.
Hello.
We will. I think we've muted. There we go. Carry on.
Cool. We'll open for questions later, but if anyone has any burning questions, either type it or save it for later. And then lastly, the kind of policing and public law element of it. So I'm not sure if people have much knowledge about how a police force is organized and run, but there's a lot of kind of political elements to it as well. Most, if not all, police forces have a chief constable, which essentially runs the organization. But there's also the Police and Crime Commissioner, which is a politically elected body. So it's really interesting to understand the kind of legislation behind that. And then for me, that kind of links into public law, so, something that you do in maybe first year or second year of a traditional law degree. So kind of lots to kind of think about as an in-house lawyer, and very interesting as well. So private practice v in-house. Again, this was something that wasn't very apparent to me when I was kind of at university or as a newly qualified solicitor. But private practice basically means when you are in a private company or partnership, which is a law firm, and their predominant business is legal services, whereas in-house means you're within an organization, part of the legal department. So, for example, you could be in-house for the police, the NHS, the army, Facebook, Google, Nike, Adidas. On the flip side, you could work for a law firm. The law firm could act for multiple different companies and not just one. So that gives you a flavor of kind of what private practice means and in-house. So from my kind of time, so just to put it into perspective, so I trained and qualified in private practice and then moved to in-house. So that's where the kind of angle of this kind of little table comes from. So from my perspective anyway, private practice is very structured. It's designed to provide legal services, so it's all centered around lawyers. So the organization tends to be very well structured, especially for someone who's training there or the early kind of years of their career. Depending on size of the organization, there is real expertise there. Coming from Trowers and DLA, so a mid-sized international law firm and a global law firm, they had huge departments and they had absolute experts in literally every area of law that they practiced in, which is amazing because as a trainee and indeed a newly qualified lawyer, if you ever had an issue or had a query about something, especially if it's really technical, you knew that someone would answer it for you. And that's like a really, really good resource to have. And linked into kind of structure and expertise is the training. I thought my training was absolutely phenomenal, both at Trowers and at DLA. But again, you have to realize these are, large organizations that do have the resources to do that because they're in the business of legal services. Private practice, a lot of people will talk about this, but the main way law firms kind of operate and kind of record or measure your work is through time recording. It's something quite prevalent in private practice, not so much in-house. So it's a big benefit to those that go in-house and don't have time recording. And again, linked into kind of the training and structure is just having those larger teams of lawyers in private practice. When I was at DLA, I was literally part of one of the world's largest real estate teams globally, and having literally access to so many lawyers at your fingertips is pretty phenomenal, across jurisdictions, across so many different niches of areas of law. It's unbelievable, and really good for kind of the early years of your career. So flip that to in-house. I would say I have a much more balanced lifestyle now. I work for a public sector organization, not a global law firm anymore. So in terms of my kind of lifestyle, it's more of a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 every day. I don't work evenings and I don't really work weekends. So way more kind of balance that I've got back now. In terms of work, way more variety. And I just cross-referenced to my kind of previous slides. I don't just do property law anymore. And I think it's good for people to really understand that early on. If you want to do different areas of law or if you want to move specialisms, it's much more easier to do in-house. In private practice, you tend to stay within one area of law or one department. Next, a really interesting dynamic. So in-house, your clients are your colleagues. Historically, in private practice, they always felt this like invisible barrier. And I'm not sure if anyone watches kind of legal programs, it's this very us and them, which obviously isn't a bad thing. But when you're in-house, your clients are your colleagues. So it's really interesting having a very formal meeting and then going to the canteen and just having lunch with them at the same time. So it's really interesting. And what I think is the best thing about that is that work becomes way more collaborative. So a big positive. Flexi leave, I think this is very specific for public sector organizations. So if you work for a council or a police force, or the other emergency services, is that you get much more kind of flexible leave arrangements. And again, very good for your balance in your lifestyle. And then lastly, culture. I think this is really big. I think when you work for a private practice law firm, especially as a student, I don't think I really appreciated this, but you have to realize that they're a business. They're literally no different to your high street companies. They have to produce a service, which is legal services, at a profit for them to exist. So that's their kind of main focus, the kind of the bottom line, that the profit and loss. But if you work in-house as a lawyer, it's much more than that. So for a police force, it's absolutely not about making a profit. It's about public engagement. It's about building communities. It's about kind of making a difference. And again, if you work in a public service, public sector organization, indeed, if you work for any organization, there is an overarching aim or culture that they will follow. And obviously always be aware of which kind of direction the organization you want to apply for is going in. For me, it's been massive, going from a global law firm that is kind of being big on providing the best legal services across the world to now being in the police force that makes a real direct impact on people's lives. I've seen that culture shift, and it's so kind of uplifting. And it's definitely given me kind of more motivation as I kind of go ahead in my kind of legal journey. So hopefully I've given you a good overview of kind of private practice and in-house. Networking. So networking is has been a bit of a buzzword. I think pre-pandemic and definitely post-pandemic, because there's so many different avenues now. So I've listed some of the organizations that I'm part of. And I think the kind of benefits of networking are absolutely huge. For me, it literally started when I was at school, and it kind of developed throughout university and developed even further through my kind of professional working career. So firstly, building soft skills. Honestly, I think it doesn't matter which organization you work for. It doesn't matter how big and fantastic they are. They literally can only give you so much in terms of your day job. Things like public speaking, negotiation, working as a team, working on committees, working on boards. They give you so much skill that you just don't get from your day job. So it's been massive for me. Number two, understanding the market, absolutely huge. So there is no better way to understand what an organization or a law firm is like until you actually speak to the people face to face. There's only so much you can get from websites, YouTube videos, LinkedIn posts, because all that stuff will just showcase the positives only. So absolutely huge to kind of network with people and really understand what organizations are really like. For me, it was fundamental, even at university, speaking to people that came to kind of careers fairs, law fairs, that would do talks with us. And then when I was a trainee, I would go to lots of kind of trainee events to really understand what other law firms were really like. So absolutely huge, and it can occur, the networking scene can occur at every single level. And as I've kind of got older, I've realized that you can really build strong, positive communities. And again, this really links to your time at university. I think for me anyway, my time at university was because of all the kind of societies and sports clubs where we kind of really built a strong community there. And I think it's no different when you're a professional, starting out, that you can really build that network of people around you, and you can really uplift one another. The legal profession is hard to get into, and it's even harder to flourish in. But if you can kind of create a core group of people, then you can really uplift one another and really make your career even more worthwhile.
Wow, before you continue, we've had a couple of messages that the screen is frozen. Are you able to reshare your screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Changing for me, but that might be because I have the host rights. So able to stop sharing them, reshare. Hopefully they might.
Yeah, I'll do. Apologies for anyone that's missed slides. Let me just redo that.
Let's see if they pop back up. Smashing. There we go.
Cool, amazing. Apologies for anyone that has missed the previous slides. So yeah, following on from networking is profile raising. I think it's really good, and especially in a world where virtual things can happen like this, the rise of social media. I think especially for someone that wants to get into law, someone that wants to maybe career change. It's such a good way to kind of build connections, add value to kind of your career and other people's careers, develop skills, and even develop opportunities as well. So some of the kind of avenues there, digesting content and articles, even writing your own content. It's so easy to do, to write your own blog. You can even contact organizations like the Law Society Gazette, Legal Cheek, the Student Lawyer. There's so many organizations out there that will have content which is aimed at you and for you. So definitely look into them. Events. So top works for anyone on this event today, but there's so much kind of online free content out there, and both in person as well now. So definitely make the most of doing that. Speaking at events, if you have the opportunity to do that, absolutely amazing. You can really build your profile. And I'm talking again at all levels. So university, your first kind of legal job. Don't be afraid to kind of put your hand up and get involved in opportunities like that. And then lastly, social media. I mean, need I say any more? The opportunities and the exponential growth of social media is amazing, and who knows what platforms and things will be available in the next kind of 6 to 12 months. But I'd say definitely have a professional social media, because it will definitely help you in kind of connecting with people. Definitely helps with research. When I was a trainee, this is a very kind of small and silly anecdote, but I remember going for an interview with someone in recruitment and a partner, and I was very put off by all their accolades, all these amazing things that they had done. I had researched and researched, and I thought to myself, I really want to know these people to the point where I feel like I know them without actually speaking to them. I researched and researched, and there was this one small piece of information that became really apparent, and it broke down all the barriers for me. And I think in one of their written interviews with, I think, one of the largest kind of legal publications of the time, this was a few years back, the recruiter said that their favorite food was Nando's. And as soon as I read that, it just made them human for me. And so when I got into that interview, it made me feel like they're just normal people. So again, utilize social media, utilize your research, and people that you interview with are people at the end of the day. So don't be put off by titles, accolades, how many articles they've written, you name it. But make sure you do that research piece. It's absolutely important, and it was massive for me.
I don't know whether Matt might have frozen. Are you still there, Matt?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you go.
Perfect. There we go. Next slide. So is anyone else having issues with the slides again? Sorry, I will pause for about 10 seconds in case. Okay, lovely. So top tips for junior lawyers. Thinking back to my time when I was at university, kind of applying for vacation scheme opportunities, training contracts, and even the same applies when you're a qualified solicitor looking for other roles as well. First one is research well, and it literally goes back to the previous point I made. We have so many resources available to us now. It would be silly not to give that a big green tick. Every single social media platform, if a firm or organization is on, look into it. Do a deep dive into Google to see what other articles or what the local press say about the organization. There's no reason in the modern day why we can't do that. So research well, and I think it's very apparent as well. It's no different to going into an exam and doing revision. The more revision you do, the more confident you'll be in the interview or application. And I'll be honest, I've been to interviews in the past where I haven't done the research, and it's fairly apparent the way I come across. So definitely research well. Be patient. The legal profession is competitive. It can be difficult, but do not be disheartened if you don't get your dream job straight away in the next 6 months or 12 months. Keep building towards it. Keep upskilling yourself, and you will get there if you really want it. Take opportunities. Again, I think this is absolutely huge for anyone that's school, sixth form, college, university. Take opportunities, keep on building your CV, because you don't know where a connection may lead you. You don't know where different life experiences will take you and kind of build skills within you. When I was in school, I was really into kind of rugby. I was into like school council, which sounds really nerdy, but you know, these are kind of the core skills that kind of I built and developed step by step. Same at university, getting involved with different societies, and again at the professional level, the Birmingham Solicitors Groups, the Law Society. It all just builds and builds and builds, and it doesn't matter what you're involved in, whether it's sport, politics, religion, music, drama, anything. Take opportunities and keep building your skills and keep on growing your network. Ask questions. Literally, as someone that's coming in new into the profession, whatever age, whatever level, don't be afraid to ask questions. It's better that you ask questions as soon as possible so that you kind of perfect different things. And in fact, people really enjoy when you ask good questions because it makes them think and it makes them realize that you actually care about what you're doing. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And just some core skills that I wanted to go through. Whenever I speak to kind of anyone at any level, whether it's student, trainee or NQ, they always kind of talk about what are the kind of core skills that firms and organizations will look at. And it doesn't really matter whether you're from a legal background or not. I think if you can demonstrate teamwork, communication, leadership, resilience, and you can have strong, different examples for each, then I think you'll come across really well at application stage, at interview stage. And again, the more kind of things you're involved in, both within work and outside of work, the more you can back up each of these things with good examples. And that's the end of my short presentation. I am on social media, so feel free to add me and drop me a message if you like, and I will respond to you. So thank you guys for listening.
Wow, thank you so much. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed those last couple of slides where you're talking about actually these are core skills, because I think we'll go into the questions in a bit, but one of the key areas that we've had questions covering is being a recent graduate, but also career changes. So those little slides at the end, I think, will resonate to a lot of people, which is fantastic. And we've had quite a couple of questions come through. So what we'll do, we'll hold on to those questions. I want to open the floor for Trish to talk, do her little section, and then we'll go into questions after. So those who have asked questions, please carry on asking, and we will get to them after. But Trish, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. And bear with me while I try and share my screen. Bear with me. Can you now see that as a slideshow? Perfect. Okay, so hi, thank you. And really going to be very hard to follow that, Bal. That was very, very in-depth and very interesting with lots of pictures. My slides are very boring, so apologies. So I thought I'd talk a little bit because I'm coming from a kind of recruitment-y background. So I thought I'd talk a little bit more about kind of the routes into law and the different skills and experiences that we're looking for. So just to give you a little bit of an insight into myself, I'd said a little bit of this at the beginning, but so I've been in recruitment for the last 13 years, so both agency and in-house recruitment. I've been doing in-house early careers recruitment for the last 7 years, and particularly, as I said, the last 3 years in legal early careers. So I was previously with Evershed Sutherland, who many of you will probably have heard of more than you will have heard of Capsticks. So dealing with everything from vacation schemes, insight evenings, open days, training contracts, the rotations within those training contracts, paralegal academies, apprenticeships, and our 10,000 Black Interns programs. So it's quite a varied role. I've got experience of probably most of the areas that people on this call could be interested in. And then, as I say, I've been with Capsticks just over 2 months now. I'm the early careers business partner here. So things work a little bit differently at Capsticks, which I'll come on to a little bit later, but dealing with kind of our work experiences, apprenticeships, paralegals, training contracts, managing our transition to the SQE, which I'm sure Matt knows a lot about, and then also managing the 10,000 Black Interns programme. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the routes into law, and the different ways that people could kind of be qualifying. And I think if you're particularly looking at, as Matt said, some people on the call may be career changers, maybe the first time they're even thinking about going into a legal career. I just wanted to make it known that there are multiple ways to get into the law. And particularly with the economic climate as it is, it's not just kind of your traditional go to university routes that you can take at the moment. So I'm sure you all know about the traditional route up to this point. So university, complete a law degree. If it's a non-law degree, you would then move on to the GDL or the PGD something now, whatever that looks like, and then you would move on to the LPC or the SQE as it is known now, and then you would complete a traditional 2-year training contract. So that route from kind of A level to qualification is around 6 years. We also have another option in our legal sector at the moment in terms of an apprenticeship, so earning as you learn. So over the same time period, so 6 years, you would work at a firm 4 days a week with 1 day a week of study leave to gain your master's in law, which now includes an SQE. So years 1 to 4 you would be an apprentice, and years 5 and 6 you would join up with the training contract cohort and you would become a trainee, and then at the end you would be a newly qualified solicitor. And the third route, and I'm sure there are hundreds and thousands of other routes, but these are the 3 main ones. So the other route, and this is the only way that Capsticks at the moment recruits for training contracts currently, is by becoming a paralegal within the firm. So joining one of our divisions as a paralegal, learning the trade, and then after a minimum amount of time being able to apply for our internal training contract process. So this is something that I think works particularly well, particularly for people early in their career that don't know what type of law it is that they want to go into. You can go and do paralegal placements at multiple firms, and you can really actually get a feel, because as Bal said, you don't know what's really going on in a law firm until you're actually either meeting with people who are being honest with you and telling you about it, not at a selling event where they're telling you all the wonderful things, but actually feet on the ground, dealing with managers, dealing with clients in that particular area. You really then come to the point where you're like, actually, yes, this is where I want to qualify. This is the area of law that I'm really interested in. So it gives you that opportunity to kind of get some real life experience, which, look, we're coming out the back of COVID. We know not many people have got much working experience, so it's a really good opportunity to do that, but also for you to make a more informed decision about which route you would like to take, but also which division, which specialism in law you would like to do. So what do we look for in a traditional trainee? Obviously, you've got the top 3 things. So the grades. Each law firm that you will apply to will have a minimum requirement in terms of grades. So I think it goes without saying, obviously, trying your hardest to get the best grades that you can, but knowing that there are other areas that people do look for, and your academics are not the be all and end all, that there are firms out there, there are opportunities out there for people with not kind of 3 A's or 3 A stars or whatever that looks like. So please don't be disheartened if that's not something that is a particular strength in your application. Something that I look heavily for is someone that can show, and as Bal was saying, positions of responsibility. So joining school councils, joining kind of taking a lead role in your Saturday job, doing things like the Duke of Edinburgh Award, like things that show that you have taken on more responsibility than just academics, just work, however it is that you've got into that, being able to demonstrate that you are someone that is going to want to put yourself forward for things, I think is really something really important that you can get across in applications. And then finally, a genuine interest in law. I think there are historically a lot of people who have got into law for maybe not the right reasons. And I think actually it comes across very strongly at interview if you don't have that genuine interest in law. So I would say have a sit down and really genuinely think, is this what I want to do for the next arguably 10, 15, 20, 25 years? If the answer is no, maybe don't commit to 6 years in training in that area. But if it is, then there are a lot of skills that we would look for from those people. So skills that we want to see evidence of in applications are things like attention to detail, resilience, communication skills. Commercial awareness is a really tough one to be able to demonstrate, and it always makes people stumble on application forms and in interviews and things. But what in essence that means, breaking it down, is having an awareness of the commercial world around you. And as Bal said, you see commercial and you think, oh, like top like FTSE 100 commercial stuff going on, but actually it's not. It's about being aware of trends, legislation, things going on in the market that would have an impact on the legal sector. So things like new legislation in government, things like obviously court cases that are in the news, keeping an eye on things like that. Being commercially aware is seeing how there are opportunities out there in the market for you to further the development of the law firm that you want to go and work in. Time management obviously is huge in law, obviously slightly less so in-house, but there is an element of kind of time recording in pretty much all sort of legal practice. And then prioritization. I think this is absolutely key, because as a paralegal, a trainee, an associate at any level, you are going to have a lot of things going on at the same time. So we really need to know that the people coming through the door are able to look at a list of things and go, right, do you know what? They're priority 1 and 2. And the rest can wait until maybe later on today. I could maybe push that out to someone else and I'll come back to that piece tomorrow, that sort of thing. So being able to demonstrate and think of examples where you have had to prioritize, really, really important. So then in terms of what can you do? So I think, and Bal said this as well, research is so important. It is time consuming making these applications, and it will absolutely become apparent with the person that is reading your application if you haven't done proper research around the firm that it is that you're applying to. So that's not just to have a look on the website and kind of look at their values. That's kind of a given. We would expect anyone that's applying would know that kind of level of detail. But it's like Bal was saying, going on to LinkedIn, seeing what activity there is, going on to other social media sites, seeing if they have a trainee social media page on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, listening to podcasts that they might be putting out there in the market. That's something I know Evershed Sutherland had some kind of thought leader podcasts out there, articles, things like that. So really having a think about and researching the firms that you're looking at. And that brings me into the next point, that you really should be making kind of a maximum of 3 or 4 applications every year. So for that, it's because you're not able to dedicate enough time to be able to give a really good application. If you're applying to 10, 15, 20 law firms, a kind of scattergun approach, you really want to be only applying to the firm firms whose values align with yours, whose work areas are the ones that you're interested in, because then you're really going to be able to focus your application and your time and your energy in the right places. Attending insight evenings and open days where they're available. Reaching out to people like myself. Obviously, I'm also on LinkedIn. I know colleagues in all law firms will be on there as kind of early careers or emerging talent, recruiters, business partners, things like that. Reaching out, we are very open to having conversations with people or just giving advice or things like that. Attending careers fairs, I would say since the pandemic, they are potentially less well attended, but it's something where you actually get a view of quite a lot of firms at the same time, so it's a good use of your time. Work experience. Now, I'm going to say this, yes, legal work experience is great, but we know it is few and far between and it is really difficult to secure. So when we're looking at applications, we absolutely do not give preference to someone just because they have legal work experience. It's more important that in that work experience, you can demonstrate transferable skills to the legal profession. So those skills that I was talking about, so resilience, positions of responsibility, prioritization, those sorts of things. Attending events and webinars like these, getting more information, building your networks, making sure that you really hear as much as you can about those places that you are interested in working. If you do go down the university route, joining university societies, there are law societies, law for non-law societies, women in law societies, there's all sorts. So definitely try and get involved in that. And something that I think is really interesting is getting involved in kind of legal competitions, because quite a lot of the time firms will sponsor competitions and the prize is a coffee catch up with a partner or a half a day's shadowing in the office or something like that. So actually it's a little. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I think I was muted. So yeah, it's a little bit of value add to you. So that was kind of all I wanted to talk about. And I know quite a lot of the questions that we had through initially are around those topics. So sorry if I've covered anything you wanted to talk about that.
No, that is, thank you to both of you. That is fantastic information. I hope we've had some questions come through. We had lots of questions submitted prior. So I hope actually what you've both discussed really does cover a lot of that. But I think what I'd like to do now is just go into a bit of a Q&A with both of you. We've had, like I say, some questions asked now, quite a few asked prior. And what I wanted to start with was we've had two very key areas jump out in the questions asked, which is around non-law graduates and career changes, but also law graduates and what are those first steps. And I think, Trish, you just touched on a really good area around genuine interest. One thing we get from kind of an education perspective is individuals still not sure if actually jumping into law is the right thing for them at both either a career changer level or as a recent law graduate. So I think to both of you, and Trish first, as you just touched on it, but what advice would you give to somebody who is still unsure that law is for them? What things do you think they could be doing to really define their interest in law, to make sure, like you say, if you're going to spend the next 25, 30 years doing this, you need to make sure it's the right thing?
Yeah, I think it's really tough. I think the research is really important. I think actually having a sit down with yourself and actually thinking, what is it that I want to get out of a career in law? What areas interest me? Because if you're sat doing something which, look, law every day is different, but the tasks you're doing are quite repetitive in a lot of cases. So actually, where do you get your purpose from? And where is it that you're going to thrive and not be bothered by that monotonous kind of repetitive work? But also, how do you go about finding that out? Is attending webinars, going to open evenings, going to insight days, all these sorts of things. It's really a long process, both law and non-law. And first step, maybe your careers service at either school, or if you're at school level or university, they will have a lot of information. They will have relationships with firms for you to be like, yeah, reach out to this person, have a little chat, speak to family friends that you know. If you don't have any family friends, go to your careers service, reach out on LinkedIn. It's absolutely free. You don't need to be connected with people to send them a message. And it's knowing what to search for. So, okay, so legal early careers recruiter, legal graduate recruiter, those sorts of things, just making those connections, really doing your research, and yeah, just ensuring it fits with your values and your purpose, because if you haven't got that from day one, it's good, you're going to really struggle day 1,000.
Very, very, very invaluable, I think, there. And Bal, you've gone through that journey. You've become a solicitor. What were the things that you did to make sure that law was for you, or actually in the area you wanted to practice in was for you?
Good question. And I think for someone kind of teaching on thinking whether that law is for me or not, I think just expose yourself to many different kind of ideas and experiences. And I think if you can find a link between law and something you genuinely care about, I think you're good to go. And don't forget, law actually impacts almost every aspect of life. Whether it's kind of sports, whether it's journalism, whether it's TV, whether it's there's so much stuff there. I think find a link and find organizations that are linked to your passions and what you care about, and then go from there. But yeah, it all starts with exposing yourself to different ideas and different experiences.
Well, thank you. I think the first area I'd like to really touch on, I thought that was a great just question to everybody's had at that point of a journey. But we've had so many questions about non-law graduates and career changes. So I think it would be really good to touch on those, because a lot of questions we've had around transferable skills and how do you stand out against somebody who has studied law or who does have legal work experience. So Bal, I think from your perspective first, we had a question prior. What do you think is the most valuable thing we can do as a non-law undergraduate to make our application more competent against somebody who does come from a law background? What would your advice be? Absolutely.
So firstly, I'd say I know so many amazing lawyers that come from non-law backgrounds. So, take confidence in that. And I'll name drop someone called Chrissy Wolf, who's very big in the kind of legal sphere, and she does not come from a legal background. So definitely check out her content all over LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Firstly, I'd say you stand out automatically because you don't come from a law background. A law firm or legal department in an organization will get a ton of applications, and the majority will come from legal backgrounds. So automatically you'll stand out. 2, focus on core skills, because that's the name of the game when it comes to interviews and applications. Us on the other side, and I have been on the other side when it comes to interviewing people, especially paralegal roles, we care about those core skills that you've built up that you can bring to the workplace. And from our perspective, as long as we can work and put you in front of a client, we're absolutely happy.
Well, and Trish, the same question to you, really.
Yeah, I think it's what I alluded to in terms of you're only really able to get it across in either a CV or an application, but actually transferable skills from the experience that you do have. So when a recruiter is looking at a CV, yes, they'll be able to see legal experience, but actually writing your CV in such a way that you're talking about the roles and responsibilities that you had in any experience. And again, it doesn't need to be working experience. It could be university projects, it could be school council, all those sorts of things, but actually looking at the job description of the legal role that you're applying to and being able to pull out from your application, from your CV, those transferable skills that you need as a lawyer: resilience, organisation, teamwork, time management, prioritisation, those sorts of things. There, for me, it's not the legal experience that stands out, it's those actual skills that I'm looking for.
No, I think we've had a question asked in the chat by Patricia, actually, which kind of leads on from that was, do you need a certain level of experience to do a paralegal placement? Especially in the case of a non-law undergraduate, where does one start to obtain this experience? So actually, is it not, if somebody is a career changer, you saying that actually they don't need to necessarily go out and find the legal experience, but develop the experience they've already got from those transferable skills?
Yeah, I think in terms of paralegal roles, in the majority, I would say most of them are kind of law graduates or non-law graduates who are completing a GDL, those sorts of things. But I have brilliant examples of people who have come from a non-law background, as Bal said, who have joined as paralegal with no experience in an employment law team, or I think we had one in a real estate team as well recently, where actually we can teach you how to do the job, but we can't teach you those skills and kind of intrinsic strengths. So I think applying, speaking to recruiters, that's all you can do. And as I say, getting across those transferable skills. Because as you say, Bal, that we've got some really great examples of people who've come from a non-law background and come into it through the paralegal route. So it's just about putting your CV out there and making sure it's able to be put up there on the same level, if not higher, as the legal grads, because of the experience that you're drawing on.
I think one thing that we've also had come through is around obviously applications, and Harvey submitted a question prior that I think would be great to hear both your perspective, as it's around showing awareness and knowledge of recruiters and also the firm, so you kind of advance your application. So I think it would be great to hear from both of you as somebody who works on one side and somebody who's also applied. Bal, when you touched on it, the Nando's, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. But what things would you advise to people that, if you want your application to really reach out to that firm and resonate with them and showing knowledge, what can they do? What did you do other than research and find out that they love Nando's?
It literally is that kind of deep diving research where you will find information that when someone reads your application, they will realize this person has gone beyond the surface. And it's exactly the same when I've recently interviewed people in the last kind of 6 to 12 months, where it's really apparent they know exactly what you guys do day to day, what areas of law you practice, what changes in the media or legislation will impact your business. And more so at the end of an interview when they ask really interesting and probing questions. Again, one that's come to me is when I was in, I can't remember what it was, my vacation scheme or training contract interview, I asked quite a brave question, and it was basically why the business was failing in one area. And the kind of partner and the other person in the room were kind of quite stumbled, because usually in an interview everything's very positive, but I was willing to ask that question because I really wanted to understand why this organization was failing in one area and how they're going to address it. But again, that was done by research, and it wasn't just looking at the surface good stuff. It was looking at all the options that were available to me. It's a deep dive. I think look for stuff and highlight the stuff that is not apparent and you think that most other people wouldn't put in the application. That's not to say put in all negative stuff, but it is to put stuff in there that will clearly show someone has taken the time to find this information.
And Trish, from a recruiter perspective, what would stand out for you that somebody shows that they know the knowledge and the awareness of the firm?
Yeah, I think everything that Bal said, but then also relating. So, for example, if it's an application form where you're talking about, okay, why do you want to work at this firm? Every person and their dog is going to say, oh, I really like the values, I really like your working pattern, whatever it is. But being able to relate that back to yourself and why that is important to you and why you think you would match with that. So yes, I really like the values, particularly this one, and I've been able to demonstrate that here in this example. Or I I understand that you've recently partnered with this company to provide legal services for this merger or things like that. And I have an interest in that type of law. I did this at university, that sort of thing. So being able to show that you've done the research, but what sets you apart is how you apply that to yourself and why that's important to you. Like, everyone wants a company that's won awards or a company that's got good values, but why particularly that company, and why are those values so important to you? Why, what clients have you got an affinity to, that sort of thing.
Amazing. I'm aware this was meant to go until past, and we've already hit that. I was going to ask speakers, do you have 10 more minutes so we can get through a couple more questions? If you're happy to carry on just for another 10, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Obviously, I think a lot of what we're relating around is key skills, research. You both mentioned resilience in your presentation slides, which was great to see. I think one thing that we get a lot from undergraduate students and career changers is around, excuse me, sorry, hay fever is rife. I hope nobody else is suffering too much. Is around looking at, with resilience is, Trish, you spoke about 4 or 5 applications and making sure that actually that's what you should be doing and putting enough effort into them. Bal, when you were applying, what were the key things that you took from when you got maybe a rejected application back? What were the key things that you took from that moving forward?
I think you have to be realistic and understand the kind of market and how competitive it is. And I think you treat it no differently to kind of any other kind of setback in life, whether it's through academia, whether it's, you know, in your personal life. You have to kind of brush yourself off and carry on. But I think modern day, there are so many opportunities in law now, you know, because of remote working, because of flexible working, because of the growth of in-house now. I always say to people, especially kind of people getting into the profession, there is a legal role for absolutely everyone, because it's not your traditional Monday to Friday in a stuffy office anymore. Literally, firms, legal departments have evolved so much that they cater for everyone. And every organization is looking for different things as well. Not every law firm is looking for the same thing. Not every legal department is looking for the same person. And you have to realize that. And even kind of applying for things outside of law, whether you apply. I remember being in university and saying, you know, as soon as I'm at university, I want to apply for a part-time job in Birmingham City Centre. I remember going to town and giving people my CV and just never getting a call back. And I remember being so disheartened about that and speaking to my family about that. I said, you know, that's just the way working life is, you know. Sometimes you need a bit of luck. Sometimes you need to be in the right place at the right time. And it's exactly the same for legal. But I'd say don't be disheartened. And, you know, the struggle is necessary because, you know, what is life without struggle? If it was so easy, then it wouldn't be worth it. So yeah, you need a bit of struggle, but I think modern day there's lots of opportunity for people. So if you don't get the first or second or third opportunity, there's going to be so more coming next.
Amazing. And then Trish, from your perspective of being at a law firm, you know, is there any advice that you give to applicants, or if you don't, if you could give it now, what would your advice be to those who do get rejected?
I think well, it's really tough because particularly at the larger firms, it's just not feasible for us to give feedback on every application that's made. I think if you get through to the later stages of interviews, really asking that question, so if you get to video interview or testing or any stage past kind of the application and then are rejected, I think you've got a much better chance of being able to kind of ask for that feedback. And it's something that we definitely are able to give at that point. Asking for feedback, look, we didn't see enough of this, or you were great, but we just had loads of really great candidates, and unfortunately that's just the situation. It's a very saturated candidate market and competition for jobs very high. I think at the application stage, I think just review what you sent through. I think in the heat of the moment, or with the deadline looming or something, you can potentially rush these things. Maybe you didn't do as much research as you could have. So most places recruit once or twice a year. If you're applying for a vacation scheme and you don't get through, you probably won't be able to apply until the next round. If you're applying for a direct training contract, that's usually a slightly different kind of application. So I think being persistent, reviewing what you've done every time, trying to, in the meantime, kind of get some face time with those, because if you've taken the time to research 3 or 4 companies and you know absolutely that they are the places you want to work, persistence, and then also attend. Oh, Patricia, Capsticks is on a webinar this afternoon. I'll go and join that, and then maybe I can get a rapport that way, and things like that. And or I can find out a little bit more about what it is about my application that maybe wasn't so right. So yeah, I think taking opportunities to kind of engage with the brands that you are interested in, but also persistence. Unfortunately, most people don't get through first time, but bear in mind that in the 12 interceding months, you've got an opportunity to add 12 months more of experience and skills and anything to put on that CV that could mean the difference between going through or not.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll come to our last couple of questions now. Now, we've had what I think is a really insightful and interesting question come through. It came through from Bernadette. She asked, do you think mums with children and a part-time job are disadvantaged in their situation in terms of getting a good legal job? Now, you've both spoken about how the legal industry is totally evolving and places work totally differently. I think, Trish, to start with yourself and working within a firm, it'd be really good to hear your response to that question and how maybe it could be a positive situation.
Yeah, I think the first thing to flag is that a number of firms have signed up to something called Project Rise, which is basically a pledge from big law firms that they will offer all of their training contracts on a part-time basis if requested. So that has been happening, I think, for the last 2 years. I know about it because Eversheds was the first firm to sign up to Project Rise. So yeah, it's something that, even that being available in the market 3 years ago wasn't an option. So I would suggest, if that is something that you are wanting to pursue, have a look at which firms are offering that as standard, because from a work-life balance perspective, we have more people flexible working, more people working from home. Following the pandemic, I think firms are much more open to kind of requests for flexibility. I personally have 2 young children myself, and have been thoroughly supported in all my roles, but also particularly in law to do what I need to do. And law, as you say, Bal, it's not 9 to 5 anymore. There are core hours that, yes, as a billing legal professional, you need to be kind of hitting your targets in terms of billing, but people are more willing to pro-rata those, and people are more willing to kind of look at flexible working arrangements. Okay, you work 8 till 4, and then if you need to do anything, do it once the kids are in bed, like that sort of thing. And the onus is really on the candidate telling us what it is they need to be successful, and then us seeing if we can support that. So I think we're in a position now where working parents are more well looked after than ever. Obviously, there is more that people could be doing, and it is not a perfect scenario, but I think that there are options out there available.
Amazing. And Bal, the question to you as well, obviously maybe less so looking at being a part-time mum or full-time mum with a part-time job, but you described how places have evolved and changed. And the legal sector is evolving, and having worked in-house, or currently working in-house, but also working firm in a national firm, international large global firms, how have you seen that evolve?
Yeah, so I think my answer would be very different pre-pandemic, because back in the day we lived in a very different world. I still remember kind of people raising their eyebrows if you needed to finish work to, I don't know, go to an appointment, or I don't know, represent the firm in a football match or something. That was literally a thing. People would raise the eyebrows if you weren't in for the full day. Now we're in a very, very different landscape, and every organization is different. Flexible working, remote working. So there's definitely a massive change in the landscape. So I'd say for any parent in that situation, don't be worried. You know, you can still establish a very strong career modern day. And to be honest, you probably have better skills than people that don't have that. You're probably more organized. You probably dealt with a lot of resilience in the past. And yeah, you'll have built up a lot of the core skills that I probably spoke about before, but you've got them in a different avenue. So absolutely do not be disheartened.
Amazing. Thank you both. And Bernadette, I've seen that you're actually on the call, so I hope that was a really beneficial response to your submitted question. I think it's time to start wrapping up now. I want to thank everybody for attending and asking questions. And I think one thing that we can do before we go is always like to finish with like a quick pop question or a quick fire question to our panelists. And Bal, we'll start with you, is if you could give advice to any person looking for an entry-level job, what do you think the best thing they could be doing right now is?
Oh, good question. I think upskill yourself in any way possible, whether it's legal, non-legal, and develop a professional social media so you can connect with people.
Amazing. And then Trish, the same question to you. If they could be doing anything now to give themselves the best opportunity to get that entry-level job, what could they do?
Again, very good question. Difficult to answer. I think just finding out what it is that you want from law and going after it. Be proactive. Yeah, and be resilient. It may not happen first time, but it will happen.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. What we will do post this event is in a week or two, we will pop this out along with both slides that we used, so you can go through those slides. We'll send a transcript and a recording of this. So if you want to go back and listen to the fantastic advice given, you will be able to. But we hope you have a lovely afternoon and evening now, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.